Okay, but that is a future wish. We're going to put it out there. It's actually really interesting because oftentimes things, new ideas, new trajectories do actually come up in these podcast interviews, and people will call me years later. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that thing that you asked me about, oh my gosh, it happened." So anyway, so we're putting that out into the universe as a really wonderful potential. Let's talk about your workbook because you work with clients in different ways, and we have this issue right now where there's so much need and there's only so many providers, and so we have to reach people in different ways, whether it's group and then we have the one-on-one, but also helping people so that they can empower themselves, maybe as a first step or maybe as an entire step. But you have this anxiety workbook, so I wanted you to talk about that and how it's helping people and why you put it together, and it's this beautiful thing on your website that I wanted you to explain to listeners.
Yeah, I love that you asked that. So it's called Anxiety Detox. It's a 30-day action guide. And what I do like to tell anyone is, it takes, if you've got anxiety, it took you a while to get to where you are. And I do think that America still is this quick fix sort of society sometimes. But the real reality is that we need to take consistent action if we want to change. And it doesn't have to be hard. It can just be a focus of I'm going to do something every day, and that's my consistent action. And this goes back to me saying, like, I was journaling, right, every day because I knew I needed to incorporate something every day. And so I've worked with hundreds of clients. And while everybody is unique, I did see a lot of patterns start to emerge. And so anxiety at the root, really, for me, I feel like the people that I work with, they've been shoving their emotions down for a really long time, to the point where they don't even recognize them anymore. They don't have a vocabulary around them. They do a lot of things to avoid feeling their emotions. So I put together this workbook so people could take consistent action anywhere from just 15 to 20 minutes a day, really diving into topics that have to do with their emotional willingness and drawing light to times that they're avoiding their emotions and what can they do instead. And so taking consistent action to see, oh my gosh, that thing that I do, that's why I do that, right? Like, get insights about themselves. And then once you have those insights that come out of work from the workbook, then I'm giving people strategies for, okay, you're seeing ways in which you need to change. Now take these actions to do them. So that's just basically the premise of the workbook.
Well, first of all, I love that. And it should be a fun nugget that, it's all about taking consistent action. And so that you have this workbook, which I love that it's called a detox, right? To help you to get started on that. So, what are some of the things that people would work through on that 30-day period?
So yeah, so as I mentioned, this is one thing I've seen is that there's this emotional avoidance that comes in for people, like, oh, that emotion doesn't feel good, so I'm going to distract myself from it. And so there's lots of ways that somebody might do that. But one of them, really, this, I know everybody's listening is going to probably have experienced themselves. Like, what do you do to avoid feeling your emotion? Do you find yourself scrolling through social media? What do you find yourself doing instead of focusing on how you're feeling? And I remember there was this one woman I was talking to, and she's like, well, I only do that at work. And I was thinking, I don't know if that's true, but I was like, okay, you find yourself avoiding emotions at work. And then while I was talking to her, she did start to realize, wait a minute, that's not true. And then she told me, she's like, you know what? I vacuum my house almost every night. Like, as an example, right? It's like, people will take themselves out of feeling the emotion through any distraction mechanism. And we know a lot of these social media, sometimes people are eating, right, from an emotion, they're like trying to shove it down with food. So this is one of the activities that I have people do, is list 20 ways that they are experiencing emotional avoidance. And 20 is a lot, because most people can think of, anywhere from 1 to 10 probably quickly, but I wanted to make it stretchy, because no, you're actually probably doing a lot of things that when you really dig deep, you'll say, oh my gosh, that is why I'm doing that thing, because I'm avoiding how I'm feeling. So that's just one example of an activity.
I love that. And I want to underline for listeners how important that is. And when I took a graduate level class on addiction, one of the things that we did for that class, it was a quarter long, is we identified one of those things, right? And then we gave it up and we journaled about it. And I just thought that was such the whole class was very, very interesting because it was a very progressive class on addiction and more about harm reduction as opposed to like complete, getting rid of things, right? But to have that experience of saying, what do we hide, or what do we use to hide from things? And then journaling about it was so powerful. So if that's just one of the exercise, that's a huge transformation for people.
Well, thank you.
And so how else do you work with people today? I know